Okay. Welcome back to Salty Saints. My name is Hayden Holm, and I am joined today by a fantastic panel of brethren from the church. We got Nursery Leaders Unite. We've got I was about to say sort of David, but sort of Laban, David Hutchinson. We've got Ryan Mills. We've got Sam from Through the Mist, and we've got Tanner Holm, my brother. And my screen, hold on. Something just blew up on my laptop over here. But
and Hayden has to go back to work.
Okay.
So this is over. Yeah.
So yeah, we'll call it a wrap from there.
Good life.
No, today we are talking about divorced dads in the church. And there is something that I realized after doing a handful of these videos and the posts that we did. I have realized that divorced dads in the church are a lot like Frodo. The only difference being that they turn invisible once they take the ring off. It seems like wards turn a blind eye, and they are gone as soon as that ring disappears. But we have brought in some brethren here to help us figure out what we can do to help these divorced brethren. So let's start off with some of the comments that we got from our Happy Wife, Happy Life video. So first things first, this comment is coming in from... This is Sean Marr, 1738. It says, speaking about Happy Wife, Happy Life, he says, certainly with my ex, this was the case. I stopped participating in choirs explicitly because she couldn't handle me being gone and would shortly demand that I stop. I certainly did feel guilty being away. And so this is a suggestion he's making right here. Perhaps we could even plan activities without the wives, just like the women plan activities to do without their husbands. Men used to do this. We used to get together before my time and do things without women hanging around. So I think he's pulling at a very interesting thread that I have seen ever since getting into the Elders Quorum. I've noticed that, and I've even had bishops tell me this, like, hey, if you're going to plan activities in the Elders Quorum, I need you to understand that you need to invite the women and the children to all of these activities. So it turns from men's activities into family activities where the wives end up just socializing together and the brethren just kind of awkwardly shuffle around the back and edges of the walls. And so what do we think about just having men-only activities and excluding women and even children from these activities? Is that something we could do? Sam, you got a big reaction. Let's start with you.
It's a trap.
It's a trap.
It's a trap. It's a trap.
Right.
Yeah. It's always super difficult, right? Because like I feel like the men in the quorum always feel like obligated in their limited amount of free time outside of work to spend time with family. Yeah. And I think that's where like we kind of get into this weird space of like brethren not like showing up for activities because it's like, man, I only have like so many weekends, and they're actually counting down, 80 years worth of weekends, and they're like they're spreading them out. They're spreading them out. It's
a finite number on that,
right?
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that potentially could be an issue. So,
okay,
yeah, I'm gonna jump in on this one real quick if you don't mind.
Jump
if my
right
bishop came to me and said, "Hey, like there really aren't going to be Elders Quorum activities. We're going to do family activities organized by the Elders Quorum." That's just going to be a hard no. Like, sorry, Bishop. Sorry, I'm not doing that. If you want to organize family activities, have the activities committee organize those, and we can do those at a ward level. That's cool. I'm still going to do activities for the guys. And if I have to do it on my own outside of the ward and just say, hey, everybody's welcome, like I don't want to go rogue. I'm not trying to cowboy anything, but the reality is the men are, this maybe is going to be a little bit controversial, but the men in the ward are the least served of any organization, of any group, period, end of story.
Pretty
yeah, absolutely, Ryan.
So you're saying it's time to saddle up.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Ryan, I really like that, and I totally support you going rogue. I think we should all, at least consider that sometimes in order to get things done. That's my starting out hot here. But I also want to say that there's a few things going on here with the guy brain, right? Because many guys they want to maximize the efficiency of something. And it seems like, if you haven't thought about it too much, that if you're going to plan this big activity, then to make it even better, we invite more people and we invite women and children, and then it's better. But actually, we're missing out on something. Like maximizing efficiency should really be thought about in terms of the elders quorum, maximizing the elders quorum efficiency. And guys, we don't think that we need connection, but we totally do. We need it as much as the women. We don't realize it as much, right? It's just a totally different dynamic if the women are there.
100%.
I totally agree.
To like piggyback off of all three of you there, like when you turn a men's activity into a family activity, you know that like you're just going to blend into the background, right? Because my wife is more sociable than I am, which means she's going to be talking to people, which means someone needs to be helping the kids because she's going to be in a conversation, which means I'm going to be walking around with the kids just kind of chilling out because I'm too tired to talk to anybody anyways, right? My kids are chaos, so they need some level of supervision at all times before they break someone or something, right? So I think that's kind of like a default position for a lot of men. They come in and they say, oh, well, it's a family activity now, so I'm just going to go into support mode while my wife goes and has some awesome conversation, which, you know, great that she's having those conversations. We just need different activities.
I get that. So what kind of activities should we be having for these brethren? Any thoughts? I know Ryan's a rogue over there.
I was going to say, you know, I'm going to say something like I can't not say something. And actually, Tanner, I'm really glad that you brought up what you did. Is that if we turn them into family activities, what is the actual activity going to be? It's going to be something where we just sit around and socialize, but we have to have games for the kids and keep them entertained. And we have to be able to give the women their space so that they can visit with one another and they can have the camaraderie that they want. That's not an activity. That's just a social hangout. So you take what could be an effective use of our time and sort of, Laban, you were talking about like efficiency. I think we need to be focused a little bit more on effectiveness instead of efficiency, and look at specific things that the guys are interested in doing, because otherwise they're not going to show up unless they're being drugged by the ear by their wife. And if they do show up of their own accord, it's because we gave them an assignment and they feel guilty. Neither of those are good reasons for showing up to the activity. But if the activity is, hey, we're going to go skeet shooting, you know what? The guys are going to show up because they want to shoot a gun. Like, maybe I shouldn't say that like on YouTube, but it's real. Like, that's true. Or something else.
We did say hot takes, so that's great. Yeah,
hot take.
Hot takes and hot
right.
Hey,
yeah. So one thing that we did just this year in our quorum, we sent out a list or created kind of a Google sheet. Here's a bunch of activities that we thought the guys might be interested in. We sent it out to everybody and said, if you're interested in doing something, sign up for it. Like, write down what your interests are. Right? We were kind of trying to find. I got the idea from Jacob Hansen on a Leading Saints episode, and he was talking about the intersection between interests and values, and like that made a lot of sense. I'm like, you know what? We've got the values already in Elders Quorum that we all hold in common. We got to figure out where the interests intersect. So we just put a Google sheet together of here's a bunch of interests that we can do. You guys write down. Everybody, get in there, put your name in there, and, check all the things that you're interested in. Now we have a specific sheet of guys. So if I have 4 guys that all said, hey, I'm really interested in pickleball, guess what? I'm not gonna be upset if only those 4 guys show up to pickleball, and those 4 guys that show up to play pickleball, they're gonna connect because they're showing up because they want to be there, not because they were guilt tripped into it by either an assignment or their wife.
Right. They weren't pushed into it. They weren't told by their mom to get out the door and to make some friends while they're out there. Yeah. No, I love that. Moving on to our next comment here. This is one of the common veins that we found in the Happy Wife, Happy Life video. It says, it's captured in this comment by Crochet Bro, which I love that tab. He says, I found the many women, while not taught, are not taught to reciprocate, are taught happy wife, happy life as well. My wife used this quote to me all the time. I eventually told her to stop. I'm sure she still thinks it. So basically what he's saying is that the brethren are being taught happy wife, happy life, but it's not necessarily being, but the women aren't being taught happy husband, happy life. They're also being taught happy wife, happy life. So their expectation is I should be taken care of by my husband. But they aren't necessarily getting that other message that just completes the circle of I should take care of him and he has needs too. Any thoughts about that? Anything we want to talk about? Ryan's got a big smile on his face.
I'm gonna have something to say on all of them, but I don't want to like hog the conversation.
Yeah, no.
But I'll kick it off with just a thought. Okay,
Go
so
for it.
what I think there's some truth to that comment for sure. I think there are women who are taught this. There are men who are taught this. It's a common mantra. I mean, does it help to point fingers and say like, well, you said that, or but I said that, but my grandma said that, or your aunt said that? I don't know if that really does much good. I think if we just start to call it out for the lie that it is, I think then we can just look forward and say, okay, what do we do to change it? What do we do to make it different? And I think the challenge, I don't feel like I've got enough, influence to change how the women in my small sphere look at that. But I do have at least a little bit of influence on some of the guys, and maybe kind of trying to shape that. So while I don't disagree with this comment, what am I going to do about what the women think, other than doing what he did and having a frank and open and honest conversation with my wife? That's a great place to start. And I think that if you aren't having that conversation and your wife subscribes to that mantra, and it bothers you, you need to have that conversation. That's first and foremost. Like that's where it's got to start. And then teach your sons and your daughters.
I think going off of some of our latest videos, like if you are an Elders Quorum instructor, maybe in part of the presidency or something like that, maybe what you could do is have a lesson that is maybe gives men some tools that they could use to talk about this in a respectful and appropriate way with their spouse. So maybe there are some brethren in there, and you can recognize them because they're the ones that are just looking down the whole time. They're the ones that are like sleeping, they're checked out. Maybe those are the ones that you'll see them. They will perk up as soon as you say the words like happy wife, happy life. It'll be like, the PTSD will trigger and they'll be like, oh no, and that's when you get them. That's when you're like, okay, hey, you're in a safe space. We're all right. We're in here together. Let's talk about how we can start setting some boundaries on a personal level. And I'm sure you can apply that. You can pull that out of a conference talk. I'm sure there's a topic in there that you can find that can relate to that. So there is, unless we have any other comments, I do want to move on to one last comment from the Happy Wife, Happy Life video. The silence has it. Here we go. So this is a comment we got from a sweet sister. She says, I have no idea how, but I'm curious as an active member of the church who has been married for 30 years. I agree. Happy life does not come from a happy wife. Happy life comes from two individuals focused on the Savior and their endeavor to become like him. The anecdotal evidence or stories that you shared were weak. If you actually wanted a happy marriage, the first thing you have to do is recognize that you are not helping your wife, especially when it comes to your children. You are a full-time parent, whether you're in office or not. You are always a full-time dad. She is always a full-time mom. The power of families come from clear expectations and clear desire to support above one another. The first thing you need to do is get rid of the vernacular, I need to help my wife with the children. They are your children. It is your responsibility to do whatever is necessary for their well-being and growth, to contributing members of society. Having open and honest communication and natural desires to become like Jesus Christ will create a happy life. P.S. You should really have a woman on this podcast. So that is the final. It wasn't lost on me, the irony of that comment, that it wasn't her husband that made the comment, but on the Happy Wife, Happy Life video. Am I the only one that saw that? I thought that was pretty funny. Poor guy. I mean, the silence is deafening.
But also the irony, we're just talking about how we need to have men's only activities and men's only this and not have the women. And the irony is now you got to have a woman on podcasts, which I actually support for certain specific cases. But it's just pretty funny that that should be the conclusion.
Yeah, well,
100%.
Hayden and I spoke about it, and I think we've niched ourselves into elders quorum talk so much that we can justify not inviting women on.
We can be
isn't that-
exclusionary here. Yeah.
Isn't that called femsplaining?
Ah,
Is
there
that
you
is that the
go.
term?
I think
femsplaining?
so. Yeah.
Just want to make sure
Yeah,
I'm,
look at
I'm
that.
keeping up with the vernacular.
Yeah.
So now here's the deal. So I didn't just pull out that comment because I wanted to dunk. It wasn't just that, although that was fun. I do want to pull a couple of ideas out of here because there is an idea that I think may be prevalent among a lot of women, whereas she says like you are a full-time dad no matter where you are. So one of the things that I have learned since becoming a married man is that the wife will view the husband as like always on in terms of like on duty, off duty with the kids. And so because she views herself as like, I am the mom, I need to be with the kids all the time so that when dad comes home, he needs to help me with carry my burden with these kids because he is the dad, he is always on as well. So now Tanner and I were talking about this and it seems like we're missing out a little bit here because it seems like we're getting to this point of equality of outcome is what she's looking for here, not necessarily equality of effort. Because while that does sound great on paper, that men and women are pulling the same load with the kids and doing the same amount of effort, the husband is still the one that is primarily paying the bills and making sure that the kids have new clothes and they have a house to live in and they have the nice car and their needs are provided for. Now, Tanner, I see your smile perking up there. Why don't you give us your thoughts?
Yeah, well, the caveat there is that if you're both working, you and your wife, then her argument actually holds water, right? Like, yeah, you should be pitching a lot more at home. You can't, get home and be like, oh, I worked a long day, I should just relax while you make dinner, if she also just walked in the door. So like in that scenario, sorry, dude, you got to work harder. That's just how it goes. But if it's if you are the sole provider and she's at home, then things look different. And it's just a matter of like, I don't know, taking the perspective that your kids aren't a burden, that actually like trying to enjoy the time that you have with your kids for both husband and wife, right? But I think there's this mentality of like, wow, it's really hard to raise children, and so I need a break. And if I don't get that break, I'm being burdened with more work because I have to take care of the children for longer during the day. And if we could just shift that mindset, I think like a lot of the problems between husband and wife would go away. Like, well, again, it's very difficult to shift, but
I think we're getting into a dangerous spot when it comes to equality. I mean, we're so equal that there are men becoming women in 2025, and so I think we need to take a step back and realize that maybe we're going to be a little bit different in our efforts, but maybe that's okay. And maybe we don't need to be the same and spend the same amount of time with the kids, helping out at home. And because, I mean, work is kind of tough. I think a lot of men are in professions that are kind of a grind. I don't know that they necessarily wake up, click their heels and smile all the way to work, and they are whistling a song just like Snow White's Seven Dwarves. I think
guilty.
I think they get home. That's right. Everyone except for Sam listening to the Tabernacle Choir singing the Snow White songs,
Guilty
and
again.
snapping his way to work. Yeah, that's right. But yeah, no, I think, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's really important to maybe share like a little slightly different perspective on the happy wife, happy life thing. And then maybe like eventually we put that thing to bed. I think for most men, when we talk about happy wife, happy life, we're not talking about division of labor in the partnership of marriage. We're not talking about tactically how we handle the kids or who does what. What we're talking about is like, if I subscribe as a man to happy wife, happy life, what I mean by that is that my emotional center is based on her emotional well-being. Like, I'm not happy unless she's happy. And my sole responsibility is to make sure that she's happy, which is a total fallacy. You can't make anybody happy. But that's what happy wife, happy life means. Like, it's not about the division of labor and who does what and who says this and who picks the kids up here and who drops the kids off there and who's making the snacks and who's cleaning up the diapers. That's not what it's about. It's this underlying mantra that is like, if I cannot be happy unless I make her happy emotionally. And that's where the problem is.
Well, and I think happiness is such a fickle emotion because it changes based off of your circumstances. What might make me happy at 11 o'clock at night is eating like a gallon of ice cream. But what might make me happy at like 6 in the morning is to not have eaten that gallon of ice cream, you know? And so your happiness fluctuates based off of your circumstances quite a bit, you know? And so I think happiness is a very silly emotion to try and base your entire life perspective off of. Totally agree with that. Sam, you look like you're going to say something.
Oh, no.
Oh,
No,
okay.
it's
all
right.
right.
Just-
I misread the
no,
moment.
I 100% agree with Ryan. Like it's one of those things where, I mean, the division of labor is going to change throughout your marriage. And so you can't base like your happiness based off of that. And it honestly, I think that portion needs to be adaptable. Like you need to be fluid enough to say, hey, well, normally I don't make the kids lunches every morning, but my wife has been struggling with, like perhaps sleeping. So she has a hard time waking up in the morning. Maybe I make the lunches in the morning because I know it's going to help her with her day. And it's one of those things where I'm doing it because it's out of a labor of love towards her. And it's not one of those things where it's like, well, you make the lunches in the morning. That's your job. Remember, like I'm the one that, takes the laundry downstairs and vice versa. Sometimes I think you need to be flexible enough to kind of read the room, or read the house. So
Love that.
Yeah, and also
Read
in
the
response
house.
to Ryan there, I really like what you said, Ryan. You were like, my focus is my wife's happiness. It's not to do with the details of how that happens, but her emotional safety and happiness. I love that, and it's a good thing you're married, because if you were single right now, you'd have like girls beating down the Hayden's door trying to get your number. But on the other hand, two thoughts. I think it's rare for a woman to think that about a man. That a woman to say the words of my focus is that making sure that the man is happy and so forth, because it's just not the way that we usually talk about it. And furthermore, the women are generally zoomed out a little bit more, and they're like, my focus is making sure the man and the kids are happy. So it's I wonder if there's some of the disconnect there. And I also wonder, I like thinking about history. I wasn't there. Well, I'm pretty old now, but I wasn't there in more than 40-something years ago. But I often think, what was different? Like, what things were different back then that have changed today to make this a talking point? So, for example, these days, men are generally expected to take on many of their kids' responsibilities and to drop them at school and to make their lunches and things, and that's fine, and it's all good and fine. But men weren't expected to back then. So back then, did we have less happy women? Maybe we did. Did we have sort of different mindsets in men and women? Did we have different messaging? And I don't think either extreme is necessarily good, but understanding where the differences come from, because something has changed over time, because this didn't used to be the case, right? My dad, he was a great dad and helped out a lot at home, but he was generally like out in the garden while mom was taking care of the kids and cooking the meal. And these days it's much more merged than that. So I'm just curious, and yet we're less happy, it seems like. I don't know really how generally happy people were back then, but it seems like they were happier, and here we are helping each other more and we're less happy. So I'm not really sure what's changed, and just curious if you guys have some thoughts.
Well, the problem is if you work from home, that your wife can quickly start keeping track of your hours, and she can start keeping track of when you're taking your breaks, what you're doing on your breaks, which you would be having those breaks at work. You would be doing whatever you're doing at work. And so she sees that at home, and the temptation is there. I'm not saying she's going to do it every time, but the temptation is there for her to start playing Mr. Manager and saying like, wait a second, what's going on here? Like, well, you got some extra time. You're helping me out now, which could make it really tough, because the man sometimes needs to take a break. Sometimes he's got a lot on his mind, and he's just like, I just need to take a break. He would be doing that at work, and no one would bother him at work if he was in an office. But at home, he might find himself in trouble. His wife might start looking at his hours, micromanaging his time, assuming that that's her time. And then if he works late, then she might get bitter and resentful over that because she's like, I saw you taking some breaks today and you're working late and now I have to take the kids more and what's going on over here? I'm sorry, I flipped into Obama for that one for some reason. Working from home was pretty cool. But I think that can quickly happen, and it can quickly turn into the wife micromanaging the husband's hours, and then the husband trying to kind of just like hide from his wife all day and saying like, all right, no, I'm working, don't worry, and stuff like that. But I'd be interested, Tanner. I know you work from home. What are your thoughts?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I mean, you got to be really careful. I just try and stay in my office as much as possible. Low visibility helps, out of sight, out of mind.
That's right.
But yeah, you just have to build a certain level of trust there, and that takes a year or two at least, right, to finally get to that spot.
Yeah, big reaction from Nursery Leaders Unite. Why don't you tell us what's on your mind?
All right, am I coming through?
Yeah.
Yes. Coming in hot.
So I work from home, and it took us about a year to figure it out, quote unquote, figure it out. And it cracked me up because it hits so close to home where my wife is like, I thought you said you were gonna have a busy day. And I'm like, I am having a busy day. Can't you tell? Like, no, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm working. This is work.
Yeah.
But it like all of these conversations to me come back to how in a marriage what is changing and what we've been trained to do and like all this different cultural shift stuff is around how somewhere along the lines we got the idea that we can have a good marriage if our wife does what we want them to do and if we do what they want us to do. And so we get in this idea of like, oh, it's our responsibility to make them the right spouse. When really, in truth, it's the reverse. That's why arranged marriages are so successful, is because they're trying to be their best instead of worrying about the other person and what they're supposed to do. So if you rewind our conversation so far and a lot of other conversations, what it amounts to is we're in this habit of telling each other what to do. And if we just stop trying to tell each other what to do, things resolve themselves pretty quickly. Like you just make your decision and, try to get on the same page if you can. But if not, do not ever do something for your wife that you don't want to do, because that's where resentment starts. You either have to learn how to want to do that thing or talk to her about it and say, I can't do this because I'm just going to start resenting this relationship.
Right. Yeah, 100%. Those boundaries are critical. Like you have to let her know, like, hey, I'm working. I need the space. This is what I would be doing at work. You can't, this is still my time. You have to respect that. You can't just, you can't just look at me and say like, okay, every time you're out of the office, that's my time because I don't have a urinal in here. Okay. But if we did have a urinal in here and maybe a little treadmill, maybe that would be different. Maybe that would solve the problems a little bit, but
Hayden, I think what's important too, what you just said and what you guys were both talking about, having those like open and frank conversations. I think the final kind of step of that is to say, yeah, this is my time. Yes, I'm at work. I have responsibilities and obligations. If you leave it at that, that may still come across as like me. That's what all those sentences were. I have to do this, me that. If you finish that off with, and by the way, this is how it helps our family, that kind of closes that loop to be like, oh, wait a minute. Okay. Yeah. Like as a wife, then as a spouse, like I can get behind that because it's easier for me to see how this helps the whole, not just, hey, I can't talk to you because you're at work.
Right. So closing the logical loop on that, making sure that she understands how this is going to impact the rest of the family and lead to a stronger, healthier, happier family. I love that. I tell you, that is great stuff right there. I think we're going to start digging into some of the divorce comments now. So this is from the divorce video that we did. This is from Jerry Grover, 8992. He said, I listened to a presentation given by an attorney who has access to LDS data. Basically, 100% active men after a divorce, only 10% stay active, and women are about 50% stay active. So, from the videos that we saw, the comments that we did, that we saw, we noticed that there were a lot of men that resonated with feeling alone, with feeling invisible after their divorce. But I would like to get a little extra insight from sort of Laban and Ryan Mills on this one, because I think both of you brethren have some great insights on the topic. It can be a strength to some elders who may be in a similar situation. But let's start with Ryan, and then we'll go to David.
Yeah, I having been divorced, I can that resonates with me. I've been through that myself, and I saw that comment, I saw that statistic. The analytical side of me at first was like, we need more information to be able to really say comment on it. But I can go with kind of, I think, the intent that we're pulling from it. Because part of you could look at that and say, well, those guys are not active because they wouldn't have been active if their wife wasn't making them go to church. So that you could look at the data that way. Maybe, I don't know.
Right.
But I think the more important thing that we can address is for those men who stop their activity. And again, activity, we got to kind of define what that means, right? Like, does that mean I'm showing up and I'm physically present at sacrament meeting, or does that mean I'm like
checking all the boxes,
engaged, right? And that's a whole rabbit hole we could go down. But I think to kind of keep it, moving forward, we could just say the general idea there is that these guys are leaving, we're assuming, because they don't feel welcome, they don't feel wanted, they don't feel like they belong anymore. Like, as I thought about this for myself, I think it's important, and this will kind of drive towards, I think, where we're headed, which is, what can the ward and the elders quorum do to support these guys. I think it's really important to understand what they're feeling, and sort of, Laban, I'll be interested to kind of see if this is what you experienced. For me, when I think back on going through that experience, the things that I felt the most was, one, I felt like a failure, right? Because in the church, the marriage, the ceiling is like the thing, right? That's what what we are taught. Like, that is your responsibility. The covenants that you make and maintaining those covenants, there's nothing more important than that. Like, no failure outside of your home can compensate or no success outside of the home can compensate for the failure inside your home, or whatever that is, right?
Right.
So you feel like a failure, first and foremost. Like, the most important thing is now, like, destroyed. You feel totally judged, and that may be internal. There may be some people who are, and some of the comments definitely sounded like there was a lot of judgment, and I've seen that in men that I've counseled as they've been going through divorce, and I've seen firsthand the actual judgment that does take place. That's got to stop. Like, to quote Elder Uchtdorf, stop it.
I like that. Yeah, I'll follow up with the quote from Michael Jordan. Stop it. Get some help. All right. I think that's appropriate right there. All right.
Also,
keep going. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go for it.
Unwanted and unloved, right? Like, the relationship that you had that was the most important thing in your life is now gone. Like, you don't feel wanted. You feel foolish and stupid, embarrassed. You look back, like, for me, I'm like, okay, I've been married for 10 years. And the thing that I thought was great for 10 years is now gone. What else am I missing? Like, how stupid and duped was I? Gosh, do I know anything that I know? You start to question everything that you thought you knew. And then, honestly, like, I think, to kind of sum it up, I felt totally lost, completely lost. My identity was 100% wrapped up in being a married man with kids. And when that's taken away, I have never had a limb amputated, but that's the closest thing I can imagine that it feels like.
Right.
So curious to know, sort of, Laban, if you kind of felt the same.
100%.
Well, real quick, there was a comment that I do want to hit to real quick. There was a comment that really resonates with that last line that you said. the essence of it is that a brother said, you know, we are completely as men in the church, our identity is completely based around how we serve a family. And so, for most men, if they do not develop like a hobby and a social group outside of the family and outside of their service in the church and outside of the house, then if that divorce happens, they have nothing. It's just completely devastating. It's like cratering to their self esteem, to their self worth, because they don't have anything else outside of that. They basically have to uh, rediscover who they are. They go through almost an identity crisis, is how I would put it. But sort of lame. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Just going back to the identity thing for a minute, and then I'll go to that. But that was something I kind of didn't foresee. I got divorced, have two kids. I went from, pretty much being in the kids' lives 100% of the time when I was at home, which was a significant portion. I used to come home from work early and so forth, to not seeing the kids more than like one day a week. Now that changed. That's changed now, but at first, for that first year or so when I wasn't seeing the kids so much, it went from like my identity was dad. Okay, so just rewinding back to my single days, I had like an identity. I knew what I was good at, musical instruments and such class. I felt like I was good at this class at college and so forth. And this was sort of who I was. And then I got married and had kids, and those kids are so precious to you. It's like this biological switch that goes off in your head. I don't know if you guys have seen that, have experienced this, but when my first kid was born, it was almost instant that suddenly my whole thing switched, and I was like, boom, I am a dad now. And that almost took up the rest of my identity. That kind of pushed everything out. And I was happy at that. I was happy to push out the musical instruments and the love for such and such hobbies, because I love this child so much and I loved being a dad so much. And then of course the child grows up, and at some point, if you're divorced, you go from, it's like a reverse boom, because now you've got like your focus, this is your identity, and then suddenly you don't have the kids around. You got to kind of reinvent your identity. And most men that have been divorced that I've talked to don't, or they don't for a long time, and they struggle with that. And so they kind of just listlessly wander around, like not really knowing who they are anymore, because they were a dad. I'm a dad, right? And then they don't have the kids. They're not a dad anymore. So what are they? So one piece of advice I give to divorced men that I talk to is rediscover yourself. Actually spend some money and some time on yourself. That means if you like mountain biking, buy a really good mountain bike and like dig into that, or art, or make a, I don't know, really find some hobbies that you really like. It sounds trite, but it's so important. And also going back to what Ryan, you were saying, you were asking if I felt all those feelings, like I failed, that I was judged, unwanted, unloved, foolish, embarrassed, all those things. Yes, 100%. And that's pretty universal. But guess what? If you go to church, so you're already feeling this. This is already what you think about yourself. Then you go to church and nobody talks to you for years. Like maybe they just say hi and shake your hand, or just wave and walk. Like if nobody talks to you and pretends like it isn't happening, it makes all those feelings even more intense, because it's like you don't expect a pity party, but at the same time, if you don't have any response whatsoever from the men in your ward, or even from anyone in your ward, it makes it worse. And that wasn't exactly the case for me. I found that the people that had been divorced already, whether even if that was years in the rearview mirror, they would go out of the way to come up, talk to me, even come visit me and so forth. But those that hadn't been divorced, they just didn't know what to say. And so my advice to anyone that hasn't been divorced but knows somebody, or will know somebody at some point, talk to them in depth. Like, I think everyone's afraid of saying the wrong thing, but I think saying nothing is worse than saying the wrong thing.
Okay,
like saying the wrong thing
quick.
is actually not something you should worry about, right? Yeah.
Totally. Let's get into this. What should we say? Because this is something that I have struggled with for a long time, having been in leadership positions and known a handful of divorced dads and divorced fathers. I just find myself in the space where I'm just like, I have a script that I can go off of for most people. I usually know what to say. When it comes to divorce, I'm just out there just swinging, and I'm just like, I don't know. And so I think most people just default to like, hey, sure do appreciate you. Let's if you need anything, just holler. We'll see you later. Nursery Leaders Unite. I'm seeing a big reaction. Why don't you lead us off?
what would you say? What counsel? What would the conversation look like if you went over to a guy's house who was fighting cancer?
I mean, I don't know if I have one for that one either.
Yeah,
That's a good question.
'cause I think
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
it
I
would
would
be a
have
lot
to.
easier.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think it would be easier, and those conversations to me are very parallel. For some reason, divorce gets sticky because of all the things we're talking about. But if you sit down and write out questions that you would ask somebody who is, like, for example, fighting cancer, or in the other example that was given is lost a limb, the questions should look very similar. How are you feeling? Is there anything we can do? What can I do? And what happened? How did you find out about it? What was it like? Like, all of those questions are fair
Those are good
game.
questions.
And I'm a big fan of the problem is the receiver, right? There is no such thing as oversharing, because it's not, when someone's vulnerable, you can't really tell them you're too vulnerable. The problem is you're too vulnerable for me. You're too vulnerable for the person you're sharing with. They're not ready to receive it. But if you find someone who is open to receiving, then you can't be too vulnerable. Maybe too much information, but that's kind of a different thing. So try and be the person who is able to receive vulnerability from others. And a lot of times the way to do that is just to sit and listen. Like, you don't have to ask the perfect question, you just have
And
to sit
that's
there,
something
even
that
in
elders are
silence.
great at. If I will say, they are fantastic at just sitting and listening. I think they can do that. They can knock that out of the park.
Well, to that point,
Sam, go ahead,
just real
Tanner.
quick. I found that I've been in some really tough conversations in the past couple of years with some friends as they go through trials. And I found that something that's been effective for me is just to sit there and say, I actually don't know what to say or what to ask, but I know what I'm feeling right now, and I'm feeling a lot of love for you. And I hope that things get better, and I'm ready to talk. I just don't know how to do it. I think that at the very least can start opening things up for them, and they can start kind of guiding you into hey, this is actually what I need from you, right? This is what I need you to say. These are the questions I need you to ask. Because you could also ask them what questions should I ask you right now? And I think sometimes it's okay to be hey, I need you to hold my hand through this so I can support you better. That's an okay thing to ask.
Yeah. Can I offer
Okay.
just a,
Yeah, I like that. Go ahead.
a
Yeah.
second alternative to the, what would you say to somebody who is going through cancer? That's a hard thing for me too to think about, having not experienced that. But one thing that I think might be another way to think about it is, what would someone in the Relief Society say to a woman who's going through divorce? Because it's pretty close to what
Did he do
maybe
this
not
time?
in all the maybe not in all the ways. Like, we obviously, there's the common trope of us being so, well, we don't go there, but generally women are great at supporting other women.
Yeah.
And they know what to say, and we know what women say. We generally can kind of guess what they say because we've been around women, like our mothers and our wives, for a long time. So I don't think that's anyway, I find that a little bit easier to wrap my mind around, I think.
Now, we did get some comments saying hey, we shouldn't be treating men like women. Don't treat them like women. Do manly things with them. And for people that are not necessarily like Ryan Mills, or maybe not like Tanner, or Ryan looks like he could be like a northern version of Dr. Phil. He's fantastic. But I think there are some brethren out there that may struggle with feelings and may struggle with communicating and being vulnerable, and they may feel a little bit more comfortable just saying hey bro, let's go do something together. Hey man, let's maybe you got a project going on at your house, I'm going to help you with that. So that was one thing that I did. I had a friend going through divorce, and he had a ton of stuff, a lot of projects going on. He was working on a car, and I'm like, dude, these are office hands. All right. Let me just explain that these are keyboard hands. But if you need me to lift something or just hold something, I can help you with your car. And so I helped him while he was working out on his car. And we just worked. We didn't talk divorce. We didn't talk marriage. We didn't talk feelings, but we were just together, and we were just doing something together. And he sent me a text afterward. He was like, thanks, man. That was really, really cool. I've never had anyone do that before, but I really appreciate it. And I was just like, maybe we don't need words. Like maybe just doing something with somebody else can be enough. What do we think about that?
Dude. That's the answer. That I'm telling you, for me, that's the answer. And I really want to hear what Sam has to say. Looks like he's got some good thoughts.
Well, it sounds like ministering. That's what it sounds like.
There it is.
There it is. There
I
it
mean,
is.
Am I right? Am I right, guys?
Yeah.
Like
You're right. You're right.
There's two things that we kind of discussed here. We discussed like the actual like lay member or maybe a member who doesn't have a calling, like their reaction to it. And then we talked about like the leadership's reaction to it, or like the elders quorum president or the bishopric's reaction to it. And I think in all reality, like the first reaction probably should be the ministers or like the friends of that person in the ward, right? Now that's where we kind of get into dicey water. Do they have friends in the ward, right? That they can actually go to and talk to? Do their ministers minister to them? Do they actually know them? And so like, it's easier for somebody, as you guys are well aware, like I'm preaching to the choir, it's easier for me to open up to somebody who I know actually cares about me aside from my issues, right? And so like,
Totally.
If my minister is not ministering, or like he only talks to me on Sunday, and it's like hey, what's up, man? Like, we got 5 minutes between sacrament and elders quorum. Let me go ahead and do my ministering assignment right here.
Yeah, he does like a quick fist bump. How you doing, bro?
Yeah.
Good.
Which,
Good. All
to
right.
be honest,
Tells the
like,
elders quorum president. He's good. He told me he's good.
But to be honest,
That's
like
right.
I'm okay. I'm okay with that, because like me and my minister, like we talk very seldom, but like when we do, it's like we're talking about a lot of stuff. We're like engaged with each other, and like sometimes he'll invite me to fishing trips, and I'm like, hey, I can't. Like I'm too busy to do that. But we have a good relationship, and we don't do a lot of like that kind of stuff, like talking like that. But I think it's just ministering, right? Like, and I do agree.
It should be.
If it comes down to it in the room, if the room gets really silent, sometimes you just got to wrestle them.
I'm a huge
I like
fan
that.
of that, actually. No, like real quick, like when my kids get like really pouty and angry, I sit there and I try talking to them, and then they'll like give me the cold shoulder, and I tell them, I'm gonna fight you now. And then we just start wrestling, like take them sparring, like go to the mat.
There you go.
Get some
go all Rex Kwon Do on them. Yeah.
Like I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
That's right.
Look, I've hated it. If I can, I thought about this one, and
go for it.
I've thought about this one a lot. I love what you said about just go and hang out with them. Like, I think as guys, sometimes when we're looking at this kind of conversation, we like way overthink it, and we're like, what can I say? How do I walk the balance between like supporting him and not offending him, and like not bringing up something sensitive? Just stop. Just go talk to him. It's only awkward if you make it awkward. Like, just don't make it awkward. Just, even if it feels awkward, just plow ahead. Just keep going. Here's what you don't have to do. You don't have to be his therapist. Like, he can go get a therapist, and he should. If you're going through a divorce, go get a therapist. But you don't have to be his therapist. So you don't have to like, now tell me, how did you feel when she said this? Like, you don't have to do that. Just be like, hey, can I hold the
like a Jordan Peterson?
Yeah, we don't need a Jordan Peterson this one. This is not cognitive behavioral therapy. Like, don't tiptoe around it. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Most men, now everybody's a little bit different, but like, you don't have to tiptoe around the issues. Just
and to speaking to that point, I think they want to be treated normally. They don't want to be treated like something weird happened. So if you do just say like, hey, let's go on a bike ride, let's go mountain biking, let's go camping, let's do something, then I think they'll be like, sweet, this is just normal. This is something normal. This is a break for me now. Like, I can just put these burdens aside for a while and be normal for a little bit. And I think that's great. Nurse
I think the two best things you can say is, hey, let's go grab lunch, or let's go do something.
That's why the cancer.
Yeah.
And then I'll jump in real quick. And then the second thing is,
yeah.
Hey, come sit by me this Sunday at Sacrament. Come sit by me this Sunday I'll save you a seat next to me in Sacrament or Elders Quorum. Because I'll tell you what, dude, going to church and sitting by yourself when your kids are with mom, that's like about the hardest thing you can do.
And that's a great question. What should we do in that scenario? Like, what do you do? How do you treat the brethren there? Do you sit next to them, or does that make them feel weird? it'd be if you have a big family and like all the kids are starting to like get crazy and crawl all over them. Would that make you feel like awkward as a recently divorced father, or would you prefer that? Would that be something that's like, yeah, great, sure.
It depends on the person, but I will say that this is something that is overlooked. Is that, well, okay, so man and woman, possibly kids in a ward, they get divorced. They maybe go into the same ward or different wards, but basically all of their friends who they used to hang out with are now no longer their friends. And it's not because they don't like them anymore. It's because their friends don't want to get involved. They don't want to take sides. They don't want to like look like they're supporting one and not the other. And so you might have invited couples from your ward over for dinner from time to time. Well, that all stops immediately. And then you might have sat with other people and that all stops immediately. And you might have like had, play dates with people with kids the same age and that all stops immediately. But it shouldn't really. I mean, certainly maybe things should change a little, but the point is that I think just, yeah, like Ryan said, having them sit with you, even with all the craziness and the kids, I think that's just refreshing. It's far better than sitting alone. I think it's just like showing them that they still matter to you and that you're still a friend is super important. And I think most people are just like, well, I don't want to take sides. So
yeah, let me know about this. What if it's from the angle of like, hey, can you help us with our kids? Like if you have a lot of kids and you're drowning in kids like I am or Tanner, and it's like, hey, could you like be an extra set of hands here? Like, would that be like, hey, would that help?
I mean,
absolutely. Men like to feel useful for sure.
I could use a brother on the other end of the pew. It gets wild over here. I had,
especially if you look scary.
Yeah, well, my daughter, she stood up like right next to me and climbed up on my shoulder. And we have a problem with her is that when she points with her middle finger. And so she was pointing at the lights in the back. So she's facing everyone in the back and points up. And yeah, so that was like flipping off the entire ward. So like having a brother on the end of the pew, that'd be great. Someone to help manage. I'm going to have to do that. I'll hunt down some single brethren and help me out.
I think if you're going to do that, you are going to need to talk to them well in advance to kind of feel out their response to that, because there's brothers that are not going to be open to that. 100%. In my experience, as I think back through some of the guys and myself, it's probably about 50-50. People, the guys that would jump on that opportunity and the guys that would be like, no, I know what you're trying to do. I don't need this little pity party, whatever you're trying to do, leave me alone. So talk to them, and talk to them good.
That brings out an important point. When it comes to ministering, I think you have to make sure that if you are ministering, you have to make sure that the ministering is happening before the divorce happens, because after the divorce, they may perceive it as just like the pity party. They may perceive this as like, oh, great, I'm the project. I'm in ward council now. They're talking about me now, and I don't want to feel like anybody's project.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know, guys. I'm going to push back a little bit on that, because honestly, that's not what happens. Yeah. Like there's some risk there, sure. But that's not what happens. I've never talked to, I don't have a huge data set, but from the men that I've talked to, that go to church, and also the men that don't go to church, but they have similar kind of friend environments, that never happens. And it really doesn't. We don't become projects. We become forgotten, right? If you want to make a man feel miserable, you take him and do nothing with him. And when he's already feeling miserable. And so like, I think we can swing the pendulum a little bit more in that direction. I don't think there's a huge risk of someone feeling like they're a project, but it depends on the person. There could be some men where even just a little bit of help is like suddenly too much. I don't know. Wouldn't be for me.
Yeah, I think the caveat, but the key to this, Nursery Leaders Unite kind of hit on it. If you're going to ask the dude to come sit with you, hey man, I need some help with my kids. Like you've seen my kids, they're freaking crazy. If you're saying it because if the motivation is, hey, I want to help this guy, don't do it. If the motivation is, my kids are freaking crazy and I could really use some help, then yeah, ask. But otherwise, if it were me, 100%, I would see through that. It would come across as disingenuous to me. Would I probably still do it? Yeah, I'd probably still do it. And it would probably still be good for me to do that. But for me, if it was the same guy who was like, hey, I'll save a seat next to me on the pew. That's way more. That's gonna
Oh, yeah.
be that's gonna connect with me much more than, hey buddy, like I could really use your help. Would you come help? Like,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
and-
kids
and
are
the
like
reason-
totally
the reason
obedient
is-
and quiet, and you're asking them to come sit, and the kids don't actually roughhouse, or they're not actually chaotic. Then that's just going to be uncomfortable for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So, good point. Yeah. Sorry, nursery leaders unite. You were saying
Yeah.
something.
And the reason is because we know it's not true. When we hear you ask for those things, we know it's not true. And even if it is true that it would help me or whatever, it's not genuine. So just tell them. Just say, hey, it breaks my heart to see you sitting by yourself without your kids.
Yeah.
You're welcome at my bench. Even though my kids are kind of a handful, we'd appreciate a hand. Like that would be way more meaningful than going undercover and being like, I can't control my kids. I need help.
Right.
Yeah, I think you're totally right.
Right.
I do.
No,
know
I
how to
agree.
my
I
kids,
agree
though.
with that.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that I can tolerate, but the one thing that I can't is insincerity. When I feel like people are not being sincere with me, or they're trying to pull a fast one on me, nothing turns me off faster and makes me want to just leave that conversation as quickly as possible than insincerity. You know, like I don't want to be a project.
Yeah.
It reminds me of like the SBO officers in high school growing up in northern Utah. They would like prance around and like I'd be like eating lunch by myself or something. And they'd come up, they're like, hey, what's your name? You know, and then I tell them my name. They'd be like, cool. Well, Braden, why don't you vote for me? My name is Ted and I need your vote, you know? And I'm just like, all right, you know, get out of here, kid. I don't need your pity, you know? Let me eat my lunch by myself. Yeah, no, I get that. I get that.
Yeah. Real quick, we have some
Okay.
comments on the
Yep.
on the stream.
Let's
that we
catch up
should,
on the comments. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see, a couple good ones here. Atomic Rex says men share better while working together, which is great.
Totally agree with that. Yeah.
Dustin Woodard. Hey, Dustin. Good to see you in there. He says, no one looks down on a person for having cancer for some reason. Getting divorced is a huge look down on. Yeah, I think that.
And I know why. I know why.
Yeah.
Is because
Enlighten us.
when you well, we've already said it. I just want to make sure that this point is clear. So when you are divorced, it is perceived as guilt. When you get cancer, we're pretty sure you didn't do anything to get cancer. That's why the analogy is so helpful.
Yeah.
So
Right.
So you sit down and I'm serious, write down the questions that you would have for somebody going through some kind of cancerous experience, and then take those questions to the divorce realm, and they'll be helpful because you're bringing the context of this isn't all your fault. That's why it's helpful.
That's awesome.
Right.
That's
Unless
great.
you are like an RFK figure, and he's like, the microplastics are the reason why you have cancer, or something like that. You know,
because those Doritos you ate, that's why you have cancer.
Yeah.
There is guilt.
I said we don't know exactly.
Ultra processed food.
It's that red
All right,
dye
more
42.
comments. Yeah.
That's right.
So Deej says, big gulps, huh? Well, see you later. Which I think is a
Ooh,
is that?
on
That's
point.
the home teachers, isn't it? Isn't that a reference from the
No,
Home
no, no.
Teachers?
That's
Oh,
Dumb and
that's
Dumber.
Dumb and Dumber.
Oh, that's
That's
Dumb and Dumber. Oh yeah, okay.
Yep.
There we
Yeah.
go. That's funny. Well, see you later.
Yeah,
And then
that's like half of the ministering visits.
Yep.
Big gulps, huh?
Yep.
See you later.
that's amazing.
Right on.
And then Dustin Woodard gave a middle finger emoji, flipping off emoji, which tracks well with my story about my daughter. So that's great.
Yeah. Well, we are
And he
salty
said-
saints, so it works.
Yep, 100%. Don't be disingenuous. So I think we're
And
tracking.
to that point, that is really important. We should have probably brought that up early in the conversation. So thanks for that. Not being disingenuous, being honest, being like, maybe this doesn't work for all men, but being straightforward in the way that Nursery Leaders Unite, you were saying. And also there are other scenarios where you can be straightforward as well. Like, for instance, one that I faced and even still face is, because I have kids and because I'm trying to be the best mum in the world as a single dad to my kids, I'm involved with a lot of mum groups. There's mum texts groups. There's like Relief Society often gets things announced to the Relief Society, and I miss it. So now I'm on the Relief Society email as well. And then you go to these play activities, and sometimes it's just the mums, a bunch of mums and me. So there could be these awkward situations where you feel like an outsider, you feel a bit unwelcome in a sense. I don't think that's intentional, but like if you're a guy with kids, that is married, then maybe talk to your wife and ensure she understands that situation. Like, okay, make sure your wife actually understands as well that it's difficult for this guy, and you're going to be able to help him a lot if you can just include him on all the activities, and so he's not the last one to find out about things. And then going to the guy who is divorced and saying, you know what, I know that you got kids and maybe they're not my kids' ages, but I really want you to be able to feel welcome at church with your kids, and so and at church activities. And so like I talked to my wife, and she's going to include you on all the activities that she has at the park or whatever it may be, just to tell him that you've thought about him. You've thought about something that's going to be hard for him, and you've thought about a solution that might help a little bit. Guys like solutions.
Totally.
100%. That's great. Yeah.
Sam, I saw you giving some ohos. Why don't you go ahead? It looks like you got something to say.
Well, to that point, I was just giving him a little bit of a curious looks. But so my wife being inactive, like I do want to be like tied in with the Relief Society, because if there is activities, I want to be able to. She's not going to respond to like her ministering sisters, so like I want to be able to be like,
right.
like, hey, they're doing like a gardening thing, and I know you like to garden, so like perhaps I don't know, I'll watch the kids and you'll go to like the gardening Relief Society activity. So I understand where you're coming from, especially with like the kids and like the splash pads and all the activities that they do aside from like the ward stuff. But one thing I am kind of curious, because I don't think we've talked about it quite yet, is the responsibility for the divorcee in this entire perspective, right? Like, because they also kind of can bring at times, I don't want to, I'm not a divorcee myself. I've come close a couple of times.
Yeah.
But there is also that
this
aspect
is a safe place.
There is also that aspect of like, hey, like I don't know the best way to approach this, but like if you're making it a little bit more awkward for me than it has to be, I'm you're not making it easy for me to like come up and like, hey man, it's gonna be all right, So
right.
I think there is some responsibility. There is some responsibility on the divorcee.
Sam, I'm really, really glad that you went there, because I was hoping somebody would. That's one thing
That's why we bring Sam on. He goes where no man goes.
He's like, yes,
I'm the person you guys can hate.
We're gonna thread that
That's
needle.
right.
Dude,
he's the villain we need.
That has been for me. So I've counseled with some guys who have been divorced or going through divorces, and that is one of the. I'm really glad that you brought that up, because a couple things that just get me. Nothing gets me more fired up when we start talking about divorce than a divorcee, a man who's going through a divorce or has been through a divorce, who shuts everybody out and won't fight for his kids. We have this, and it's part of our niceness culture in the church, that we think if I'm the nice guy as I'm going through the divorce, like if I'm like demure, like little Peter, everything will work out. She will see my goodness. The judge will see my goodness too. Her attorney, they will see that I'm such a nice guy. They will have mercy on me, and I will get shared custody. That's freaking bullcrap. No.
Ooh,
your kids,
strong words.
Your kids need you to fight for them. Stop being Mr. Nice Guy. Stop trying to lone wolf it. Don't shut everybody else out. Man, your kids need you to fight for them. So fight for them.
And it will backfire.
All right.
No.
Soapbox done.
That's good. No. I love that. Nursery Leaders Unite, you were saying something, go for it.
Oh, sorry. It will backfire if you don't. If you say it'll work out better if I just keep my distance, it actually will backfire. The reverse will happen, and everybody else will think you're not interested. And so you'll be excluded. The judge will exclude you because of your disinterest.
Interesting.
Doesn't matter the reason why.
So your agreeability, maybe over agreeable, is almost perceived as like a passiveness, where everyone is like, he doesn't really care, and the whole time he's just sitting there like, well, I'm sacrificing everything. They're gonna pick up on this one day.
I would say like this: your placation will be perceived as irresponsible. Your placation will be received as irresponsibility.
Yep. Because how many deadbeat dads do the court see? they see a heck of a lot more deadbeat dads who don't want to be involved and who don't care than the dad who is willing to fight for his kids because he loves them.
And they look the same
That's
way
a
you
good
do.
point.
The judge can't tell the difference.
That's
a good call out. So be sure to fight for those families. Tanner, do you have any chats that we need to catch up on?
Dustin has a couple. He says he's as salty as they come, which I believe. And then he says,
All right.
I'm curious, where do divorced dads sit in church? We've talked about where they should, but where do they actually sit? What's our best guesstimation there?
I'm not sure if this is like a literal question or if this is like a metaphorical question here.
I think it's a literal one. I think he's just curious.
Practically speaking, they usually sit right where they used to sit, only now they have an empty row beside them because there's no kids, there's no wife. So there's plenty of opportunity to sit there. And back to Sam's point of there is an onus on the divorced guy for sure, that he needs to get outside of himself and go and seek help. And not just, I'm not talking about therapy, I'm talking about friendship and so forth, and to rediscover himself and to renew his identity and know who he is and feel good about himself. But at the same time, we don't ask that of a cancer patient, right? They should as well, but really we just go there with whether or not the cancer patient is actually trying to make their life as good as possible. We still go there and offer all that we can. So I would say, yeah, there's an onus on both sides, but if they're not doing anything, don't use that as an excuse for us to not reach out to them and see, to feel that out and see how it is.
100%.
I love that. So big call to action. It requires effort on both parts, but we need to make sure that we're showing up and as they put themselves out there. Because if they put themselves out and nobody reciprocates, or they feel like they've gone invisible after they took off the ring, then it's going to bottom out. It's going to feel pretty bad. And I think we've seen that. I think I know personally a lot of men that just completely left. They're just like, it's too hard. It brings up too many big feelings, and nobody helped me through that time. I had nobody. There was nothing going on, and so it's just like, yeah, no, it's super easy to lose those men at that really painful point in their lives. Any last thoughts on the divorce video or divorce comments that we had, Tanner, before we move on?
There's one more comment. Dustin says that his parents got a divorce and his dad did that, meaning he kept his distance and he went passive and he never saw him and he felt that. So the act of not fighting was hugely detrimental to his relationship with his dad. So you guys really nailed it on the head there. So I've just really enjoyed listening to your guys' perspectives on this. It's been very enlightening.
Yeah. And something that we're trying to bring out a little bit more, because this isn't the kind of topic that is usually discussed in Elders Court. Come to find out, and we're trying to kind of bring a few more difficult conversations to the table and help people see that, like, there are faithful, active members of the church that are trying to grapple with these questions and while remaining faithful at the same time. Now there is one Discord submission that we got. So in our Discord, dadsneedfriends.com, we have a form, a completely anonymous form where you can just submit any kind of question or struggle that you're facing. And this one, I would be really interested to get your thoughts on it. It says, I've been going through therapy and have realized that after being married for just over a decade, that my in-laws are incredibly codependent. This has negatively impacted my relationship with my wife because I have been standing up and speaking out against the system. It puts my wife in a very tricky position because she has to balance between me and her parents. I have had to give in quite a bit to keep the peace. When I call out the situation to my wife, she will usually agree with me that it is toxic, but that tension it would cause with her parents would be worse. What can I do to stay true to myself and against the toxic codependency and respect my wife and her relationship with her family? Ooh, big smile from Nursery Leaders Unite. Why don't we start with you?
Yeah, join the club. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
We don't have time. I mean, that's the real answer. We don't have time to talk about this. So I think the quickest advice would be to practice leaving. When the moment's right and when you're seeing something, just leave. With or without the wife and kids, just practice leaving.
So are you talking
And
like
it doesn't mean like
literal or metaphorical? Like, are you saying like divorce,
No.
or are you saying leave the room?
leave the room. Like if there's a situation
I got
with
you.
the in-laws or whoever it is, and you like I when I started practicing this, you learn a lot. You learn a lot about them. You learn a lot about yourself in different situations. And sometimes you leave the room. Sometimes you leave the house or the property. And sometimes you talk to your wife beforehand. And sometimes you have to text her when you're 10 blocks away. It depends on the situation. But you have to practice leaving those situations, or else you'll drive yourself nuts. Like you'll reinforce so much bitterness and resentment and frustration. It just won't work.
Right.
That's great.
So you're saying like this is a good strategy to avoid just punching holes in the wall, you know, feeling like you just drank a Red Bull and you are ready to go. You're just like completely on
it's a good
edge. Like,
it's a good first step. Again, we could talk about that topic alone for an hour, but a good first step is to give
Totally.
yourself permission to leave a situation that is not good.
I love that.
That's
Ryan,
great.
I
And,
saw a big
like-
smile on your face when we read it. Why don't you give us your thoughts?
Didn't you guys know that like the 11th commandment is thou shalt be nice? You're just supposed to be nice and take it.
Ooh,
Must have missed that one. Yeah.
That's right.
No, that's
That's
not what you
right.
do.
You
I-
apologize to your wife for
You
even
better
being
apologize.
upset.
And you better apologize
right.
to your mother-in-law while you're at it.
Yeah.
Look, I'm a big fan. I can actually relate to the wife a little bit in this scenario, because I've had circumstances as a divorced guy. I know I'm going to go back to that just really quickly. I have circumstances where I feel like I'm stuck in the middle between my wife and my ex-wife as it relates to things with the kids and how things are going to move forward with the kids. And I'm trying to sort of stand up for myself, stand up for my wife, work as a co-parent with my ex-wife. So like I can relate a little bit more with the wife in this circumstance. And so maybe I'll share just a thought from that perspective. And from that perspective is, first off, you're doing the right thing, I think, for sure, by telling her, like sharing your concerns, telling her how you feel, telling her, why you feel a certain way. Like that's a great start. And the more you talk about that, the more she'll start to understand, the more that she'll be able to then not feel stuck in the middle and explain why she feels the way she feels. It just, you got to communicate through that. There is no, I think Nursery Leaders Unite is right. Like there's no quick and easy answer to this one, but communication, I think, is going to have to be at the heart of whatever the solution is that it looks like. It's not going to be easy, but I'm going to tell you, don't follow the 11th commandment. Like, don't be afraid
Totally.
to rock the boat just a little bit.
I love it. I see Sam on the edge of his seat. He is chomping at the bit. Go for it.
Oh, no. This is not one of those. No.
Oh, okay. His
The only-
mother-in-law is watching.
Yeah, no, she's probably not watching.
Okay, all right.
We'll leave it at that.
I'll say something real quick, because I'm
Yeah.
like the only one here that's immune from this, because I'm currently not married, and so I don't have any in-laws to have to. So anything I say is not about in-laws, right? Not about my in-laws.
There you go. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm actually quite free to speak here. I two thoughts. One is, and this is good general advice, is someone gave me the advice when I was getting divorced that hold lightly things that hurt. If you have to hold a cactus, okay, you have to hold a cactus, but you don't have to squeeze a cactus, right? And so like only holding lightly these things. So it may be, for instance, that you are like, what is the real problem here? Is this person asking the question, are they saying that, well, your family does, meaning the wife's family does XYZ, and that's toxic, and therefore it irks me? Well, yeah, maybe you could just let go of that a little bit more. Or maybe deeper in the question, is it like, your family does XYZ, it's toxic, and actually I see those toxic things coming into our marriage, and that's the thing that I'm actually getting at. In which case, it's a
Right.
totally different conversation, right? So yeah, like dig a little bit deeper into this question, I would say, if you're facing this. And I would also maybe try to help. These things take time, but if you attack someone or their blood, meaning their family, then generally things aren't going to end well. So I think if you if we consider this as a me problem, a problem that we can figure out as a couple, maybe like just being around the family less, like Nursery Leaders United is saying. And so you don't have to go to dinner every Sunday night at the house, and maybe just ratcheting that back to once a month, with the full understanding of with the wife of like why you feel this way, then maybe that will help a lot as well. I don't know. Lots of thoughts here,
Totally.
but I don't know if I have enough time to flesh all these out.
Yeah, that's a whole
Well,
other
here's the deal.
conversation.
I do think that there is a quick and easy solution to this. And this may cause some controversy, but the solution is move away. Oh
No.
Oh,
No.
look at that! Look at
The
that!
wife would have to agree.
How
though.
dare I?
It
Yeah,
doesn't always work.
that's right.
Move away
Here's
from
the
the
deal.
motherland.
Well, here's the deal. Not necessarily. Well, in my
North
wife's
Carolina's pretty
case,
nice.
that's what we did. But the deal is, President Nelson actually said this in his biography. He said the best thing that he did for his marriage was move away from his family and her family. Like they both just moved away. And the reason being is like they couldn't go running to mom and dad with their problems. Whenever problems came, they had to start leaning on each other more, and it made them grow stronger as a couple. And so if this isn't like a divorce situation, if this is just like you've got toxic in-laws that are driving you crazy, I would say sit down with your wife and say like, hey, I can't handle this. If we cannot establish healthy boundaries, let's get out of there. Let's just move somewhere else, and then we can visit them when we on our terms, you know. And I know this is heresy because most people in Utah grow up, they live, and they die next door to their parents, especially the women. You know, I think I've heard it multiple times. Like parents will when their son gets married, they lose a son, you know, because they live next to the wife's family. And so I think it's the best thing you could do is just move away and have to lean on each other. You both get stronger in that case. Tanner, what are you going to say?
Yeah, so this is a hot take. This is something I've learned recently, that if your wife has come to you complain that she's struggling having a good relationship with her parents and there's some toxicity there and she doesn't know how to manage it, it's your family. Like, you're the leader of your family. You should talk to her, get on the same page, and then you can take charge of the communication if you need to. If she supports you in that, you can go and you can talk to him, say, we're going to stay for a while, and you know, as soon as they do something like Nursery Leaders Unite, say, we're going to leave. We didn't like that. And you can take charge and actually lead that, because your wife needs you to do that. I think that's something
Right.
that we kind of tap out, because when it's her family, it's like her family, her problems. You know, it's like, I don't want to get involved. But at the end of the day, it's your family interacting with her parents, right? And her siblings. And you have to, you know, it's very helpful, or it can be, to step in between them and kind of mitigate the damage there, as long as she's supporting you in that, right?
I like that.
So that's what I would recommend do, is just kind of take charge.
Okay, real quick, final point. This is the last comment, and then we'll close it up. This is so this was posted 2 days ago from Mr. Gee. It says, I really like a lot of the men in my quorum. However, I am not close to any of them, not one. My best friend is 2 hours away and we talk on the phone. He is a member of the church. He's divorced. He comes down every 2 weeks, but every single time we try to get together, somebody guilt trips him, saying this weekend is for your family. We have hung out twice in 12 years. Other than that, I have no friends. I have absolutely no social life. I want to be very clear. My wife is very supportive of my efforts to go out and do things. She wishes I had more friends. The one guy I've tried to be friends with outside church is so busy working full-time, caring for his kids, and for a wife who will not get off the couch or out of bed. Every single time we make plans, the phone rings and our plans are set aside. We've even stopped trying. We both know it's never going to happen. So let's talk about thoughts. First of all, so there are a couple different things going on here. First of all, this is a brother that wants to make friends, and this is, I think, a really important call to action for a lot of brothers out there. Like, if this is an insurance policy to make friends, right? Because once you get divorced, you can bottom out. You might not have anybody. So for your own health and for your own sake, get a buddy, you know. Use the buddy system. Whenever you're out in the woods and you're out somewhere scary, you use the buddy system, right? That was scouting 101. So that's the first call out. But the second call out is like he feels like he cannot make friends because everyone else is so busy or feeling guilted into staying at home. What are our thoughts, Sam? It looks like you had some comments ready to go. What are you thinking?
No, so actually, I was thinking about a couple of different things, like this steak. So one of the things that Jacob Hansen had brought up like a while back that I remember, he was like, "Why doesn't the steak do more like, hey, like steak, we're gonna do this organization between the wards of like, I don't know, like 10 brethren in the entire stake like to study Hebrew, so we're gonna do that on Wednesdays. So steak, can you either put that on or help us with the fundings for trips and stuff like that?" And so it kind of makes me wonder. It's like if you're in a situation where your stake is relatively geographically close, then potentially just reach out to other, like go on your calendar and push all the things so you can see all the events and go to some of the other events and meet some of the other brethren in some of the other wards. Like inevitably, if your ward is older and you just have, or you have a ward that's like, a lot of them are just like heavy workers or like, business owners. Perhaps there's another ward where that's not the case. And they also need friends too, right? Dads need friends.
I love that.
So,
love that
right.
comment. Yeah. Ooh,
join
right
Dads
there
Need Friends,
on brand.
Discord.
Yeah.
That's right.
On brand.
Dads Need Friends Discord. That's great. Real quick, I think so. We have young men. The young men, we prioritize high adventure every single year. We say we need the young men going out on high adventure. How much more do the men need to go on high adventure every year? And why is that not a thing? Like, I think more men would come alive and more quorums would wake up if they did high adventure, if they went out and hiked a mountain, or if they went out and had to do some really tough things together as a quorum in the woods and in the wilderness. What are we thinking about that? Nursery Leaders Unite, big nods over there. You are shaking something fierce.
Yes. Except
at
my spin on it is a little bit different. So a man, maybe not all men, I guess, but you just really need one or two activities to look forward to every year. You don't need something every week or every month. But if you have one thing that is planned 6 months in the future that is more than like going out to eat, you're going to go do something that's a little bit weird, a little bit cool, a little bit crazy, then that's enough. Like you can get by for a long time on one thing. So what I've done my whole life is I pack up a motorcycle and I drive out to the desert and I'll spend like 3 to 5 days out there. And when I come back, I'm good for a year. I don't need any other crazy things for a whole year because I just spent 5 days doing something insane. And I take friends with me and I give my friends 6 months advance notice. So they've been looking forward to it for 6 months. And I love what Ryan was saying about the retreat. I think that's totally cool. Doesn't have to look exactly like that. It could be the hiking, it could be whatever, but you have to put it on the calendar and commit to it months in advance and it will happen.
I love that.
Absolutely. And to that point, with the question that we got from the Discord, if they're like, plan it out and be prepared, even put some money aside. Is if your wife says, I need you home, just hire a sitter, like hire someone to come and hang out with her, and say, hey, you don't need me here. Actually, I have another human here who can help you. I'm going to go, and I'll be back. Like with enough notice and enough commitment to that event, I think that you could actually, mitigate almost every scenario and make it out there. So I like that call out to plan 100%. It out like that.
Okay, awesome. I gotta jump on in this really, really fast. That comment
jump away
reminded me. I did a couple years ago. I did a Fifth Sunday lesson on. It was I kind of titled it what did I title? Oh, spiritual warfare. So like the battle for the hearts of men, right? I'm trying to
sounds awesome.
Get the guys riled up.
Yeah,
it was pretty cool. And part of the research I did for this, I think might be helpful for the person that made that comment. So I went and did some digging into U.S. military tactics, right? Greatest fighting force in the world. So I had a couple things. One that I pulled from the U.S. Army operational. Operational isolation of the enemy in offensive urban operations. It's the military, so I'm sure there was like a huge acronym for that. And then I pulled something from the Marine Corps MCDP 1-3 Tactics Manual. I bring this up because I think this guy needs to understand, like, what you're experiencing, I think, is a direct result of what Satan wants you to experience, right? What I pulled from both of these things is that if you're in a battle, like whether you realize it or not, you are at war with Satan, and his tactics are going to be, I need to isolate you, because if I can isolate you from your allies, you are easy to pick off, right? So just one thing from the Marine Corps manual that just said once we've gained an advantage, so if I can isolate you for a little bit, once we've gained an advantage, we exploit it. We use it to create new opportunities, like your cell phone or porn or whatever it is, to keep you further isolated. We then exploit those opportunities to create others, shaping the flow of action to our advantage. The advantages do not necessarily have to be large. Even small favoring circumstances exploited repeatedly and aggressively can quickly multiply into decisive advantages. Like the chess grandmaster, we must think ahead to our next move and the one beyond it. How am I going to use this advantage to create another one? That's what Satan wants you to do. So if you feel stuck and isolated, that's why. So I guess my takeaway from that is, like, don't give up. If you're the only guy in your ward, you've got some good advice already. But if you're the only guy in your ward and nobody else is interested in like connecting at all, find some other group of good guys to do that with. Go join a softball league. Go join a gamers club. Like, go join a running club or a swimming thing or whatever it is you're into. Like, go take a woodworking class and connect with a bunch of dudes and learn how to build chairs. There's a ton of things you can do and connect with guys. And as somebody mentioned in the Discord earlier, or in the live chat earlier, like, that's how guys connect. We don't necessarily connect by sitting and sharing our feelings. We connect by like standing shoulder to shoulder and doing things together. So don't let yourself get isolated.
And you said you taught that in Elders Quorum, is that right?
Yeah.
So which conference talk did that come from? I don't remember hearing that in conference.
Yeah, that's that rogue.
Got him. You caught him.
Did you know what the best part is? My stake president happened to be there that day, and he sat like this the whole time.
Nice.
No. Look at that. The eyes.
Sweating bullets.
I tell you, I love that lesson idea. We might, maybe we could get that. I think maybe if other Elders Quorum presidents out there are interested in something like that, maybe we can pull a link to that, and then they can have that conversation with their quorums. Because I think it's a great conversation to have. You know, it's like, hey, let's not be isolated. You know, find your buddy. But I love that. I think we're getting close to time. So, are there any chats that we need to catch up on, Tanner?
No, I think we're good on chats. Yeah, I think we're good on that side.
Right on. Okay. So until next time, this is Nursery Leaders Unite. We got Sword of Laban, Ryan Mills, Sam with Through the Mist, Tanner. I'm Hayden Holm, and this is Salty Saints. We'll see you next time.